Step on the mat and prove you're not just two loud ghetto girls pretending to know karate. Blaine Harker's voice cut through the dojo as he stepped closer to Nia Rowland, a mocking grin on his face while the room fell quiet around them. Black belts tightened into a circle, grinning like they'd already won, while Jace Rourke stepped forward and shoved Nia hard in the chest. 30 seconds, he sneered. That's how long you'll last. The shove barely moved her. Nia stood silent beside her twin Naomi Rowland, arms folded, eyes steady while the men laughed louder, already tasting humiliation they thought was guaranteed. None of them noticed the old scars lining Nia's forearms beneath the blue G sleeves, or realized the two women they were mocking had spent years training in places where fights weren't tournaments. They were survival. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The late afternoon sun slanted through Patriot Tiger Dojo's high windows, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floor. Red and blue mats covered the main training area, surrounded by heavy bags hanging from ceiling chains. The air smelled of sweat and artificial pine cleaner. Nia and Naomi Rowland entered side by side, their steps measured and quiet. Ms. Loretta James walked between them, her silver hair catching the light, her spine straight despite her age. The twins wore simple black workout clothes, sleeves covering their arms. Nothing flashy, nothing to draw attention. Blaine Harker's smile appeared before he did, emerging from his office in a crisp white G with multiple patches. His black belt was tied perfectly center, every fold exact. Two younger men in black belts flanked him, Jace Rourke and Cole Vance, their grins mirror images of contempt. "Well, well," Blaine said, spreading his arms wide. "What brings such unexpected visitors to my dojo?" His tone dripped with fake welcome. "Good afternoon," Nia said evenly. "We'd like to discuss renting space for a seniors safety class." Deputy Wren Maddox lounged against the wall, arms crossed over his uniform. He hadn't been visible from the entrance. His boots left marks on the mat he stood on. "Seniors safety?" Blaine's eyebrows rose. "That's ambitious. For your skill level." Jace and Cole snickered. Naomi noticed how they positioned themselves, one left, one right, creating a subtle triangle with Blaine at the point. "We have experience," Naomi said quietly. "And references." "Experience?" Blaine's smile widened. "In what, exactly? Aerobics? Chair yoga?" More snickers. Ms. Loretta's jaw tightened, but she remained silent, watching. "May I see some ID?" Deputy Maddox pushed off the wall, circling behind them. "Just following procedure. Can't be too careful these days." Nia tracked his movement without turning her head. "Is that standard for inquiring about facility rental?" "It is, when I say it is." Maddox completed his circle, stopping too close to Naomi's shoulder. "Problem with that?" "No problem," Naomi said, her voice level. Both twins produced their licenses. Ms. Loretta kept her hands folded. Jace moved suddenly, bumping hard against Ms. Loretta's shoulder as he passed. She stumbled, but caught herself on Nia's steady arm. "Oh!" Jace's face twisted with mock concern. "So dramatic. It was barely a touch." He high-fived Cole, both laughing. Nia's eyes flicked to the security cameras in the corners, then to the emergency exit, marking distances and angles. She noted how Blaine and Maddox exchanged quick glances. A silent signal passed between them. "Look," Blaine said, pacing the edge of the mat. "This is a serious training facility. We teach real martial arts here, not whatever it is you think you can offer." He gestured dismissively at their clothes. "Our insurance has standards. Our reputation has standards." "We understand," Naomi said. "We can provide credentials." "Credentials?" Cole interrupted. "From where? The YMCA?" Now, Blaine raised a hand, but his smirk encouraged more mockery. Let's be professional. These ladies clearly mean well. They just don't understand the liability issues involved in real combat training. We understand liability very well, Nia said, each word precise, controlled. Do you? Maddox was still holding their IDs, studying them with exaggerated care. Because entering a legitimate business with false pretenses could be problematic. Ms. Loretta stepped forward. There's nothing false about— Ma'am, Maddox cut her off, please don't interfere with official questions. Official? Naomi's voice remained soft. Are we being detained, Deputy? That depends on your cooperation. His hand rested casually on his belt. Blaine clapped his hands together, the sound sharp in the tense air. I have a simple solution. He pointed to the blue mat in the center of the room. Right now, spar my black belts, or get out. The dojo's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as students pressed together, forming a tight circle around the blue competition mat. Their eager faces glowed with phones raised high, ready to record what they assumed would be quick entertainment. Evan Sato lifted his professional camera, carefully adjusting his position near the wall. Watch this, Blaine commanded, his voice carrying across the room with theatrical authority. Watch what happens when people don't know their place. Jace and Cole strutted onto the mat, their black belts tied with precise knots, uniform creases sharp enough to cut. They bounced on their toes, throwing practice punches that sliced the air with sharp snaps. Ladies, Blaine called out, dripping condescension. Last chance to walk away with some dignity. The twins stepped onto the mat with calm precision. Their movements were measured, efficient. No wasted energy, no showboating. Naomi adjusted her sleeve while Nia scanned the room, noting each exit, each camera angle, each face in the crowd. Scared yet? Jace taunted, throwing a high kick that stopped inches from Naomi's face. She didn't flinch. Should have stayed in your lane, teaching old folks how to fall down safely. Deputy Maddox moved closer to the mat's edge, hand resting casually on his belt. Remember, he drawled, any excessive force will be treated as assault. His smirk said everything about whose definition of excessive would matter. The referee, one of Blaine's junior instructors, raised his hand. Ready. Begin! Jace moved before the word finished, launching forward with a vicious shove aimed straight at Ms. Loretta, who stood watching from the edge. The crowd gasped as his shoulder drove forward, but Naomi was already there. She slid between them like water, absorbing the impact into her chest. That's a foul! Loretta shouted, but her voice was drowned out by whooping students. Jace followed through with a forearm strike to Naomi's sternum, clearly hoping to wind her. The blow connected with a meaty thud that echoed off the walls, but Naomi moved with it, pivoting on her back foot as if they were dancing. Her hands found his sleeve and collar with surgical precision. One fluid motion, hip rotation, leg sweep, shoulder drive, and Jace went airborne. He hit the mat with a thundering crash that silenced the room. Before he could process what happened, Naomi had him pinned, knee across his torso, arm trapped in a submission hold that left him grimacing. "Tap out," she said quietly, applying just enough pressure to make her point. Cole roared and charged at Nia like a bar brawler, telegraphing his intentions from 3 steps away. Nia waited, weight balanced perfectly, until he was fully committed to his rush. Then, she wasn't there anymore. Her sidestep was so smooth it looked like special effects. Cole's momentum carried him past as Nia's hand chopped down into his thigh. His leg buckled, and she guided his fall with terrifying control. The impact when he hit made the entire mat bounce. In one continuous motion, she trapped his arm in a joint lock that had him gasping. "Stay down," she advised calmly. "This doesn't need to hurt." Jace thrashed under Naomi's pin, face reddening with rage and humiliation. He bucked upward, swinging wild punches that didn't come close to landing. Naomi shifted her weight and drove him back down with practiced ease. This time she trapped his wrist in a control hold that left his cheek pressed against the mat. The room fell completely silent, except for the heavy breathing of the pinned fighters. Students lowered their phones slowly, faces slack with shock. Even the most loyal dojo members couldn't deny what they'd just witnessed. Blaine's camera-ready smile crumbled as he watched his top fighters completely neutralized. His jaw clenched, a muscle twitching near his temple. The carefully crafted image of Patriot Tiger's invincibility lay in pieces on the mat. Evan's camera whirred softly as he captured it all. The twins' perfect technique, the bullies' humiliation, and, most importantly, Deputy Maddox's face as realization dawned. The officer's smug confidence drained away, replaced by something darker, as he finally understood. These women weren't easy targets. They weren't afraid. And judging by their technique, they weren't amateurs playing at self-defense. Through his viewfinder, Evan zoomed in on Maddox's expression, that crucial moment when the deputy's entire worldview visibly shifted. Gone was the lazy arrogance of a man accustomed to intimidating civilians. In its place was the wary calculation of a predator suddenly recognizing more dangerous hunters in his territory. The twins maintained their holds, breathing steady, faces calm. Professionals containing a threat with minimum force. They showed no anger, no triumph, no desire to inflict pain. Their control was complete, and that made it all the more devastating. The stunned silence in the dojo shattered as Blaine started clapping with exaggerated enthusiasm, his face locked in a rigid smile. "Well, that was entertaining. Everyone, show your appreciation." His command brought scattered, uncertain applause from the students. Jace and Cole struggled to their feet, faces flushed with a mixture of pain and wounded pride. Cole rubbed his shoulder while Jace massaged his wrist, both men avoiding eye contact with anyone in the room. Their pristine uniforms were now wrinkled and askew, much like their shattered confidence. Naomi and Nia stepped back, maintaining a careful distance. They made no victory gestures, no triumphant speeches. They simply straightened their clothes and nodded respectfully to their opponents, as if this had been nothing more than a routine training exercise. "That's it?" Blaine's voice carried across the dojo, dripping with manufactured outrage. "No apology for excessive force? These are training mats, not a street fight." He gestured dramatically at his black belts. "This kind of aggressive behavior is exactly what we try to prevent here at Patriot Tiger." Students began muttering among themselves. "Had to be rigged," one whispered. "No way they could. Must have gotten lucky," another added, loud enough to carry. "Those holds were illegal in competition," Cole announced, finding his voice. His words came out whiny, desperate to salvage something from the humiliation. "They wouldn't score points in a real tournament." Jace's face darkened with growing rage. "Yeah, those weren't proper techniques. That wasn't real martial arts." Deputy Maddox pushed through the circle of onlookers, badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Now, he drawled. "Let's all stay calm here." He moved with deliberate slowness, positioning himself between the twins and the exit. "Ma'am," he addressed Naomi, drawing out the word like an insult while stepping well inside her personal space. "We wouldn't want anyone getting hurt, would we?" Naomi met his gaze steadily, neither backing away nor escalating. "No, Deputy, we wouldn't." At the dojo's entrance, Renee Caldwell stood frozen, one hand still on the door handle. She'd arrived to pick up her daughter Tasha from what was supposed to be a trial class, only to walk into the aftermath of something that felt more like a street fight than martial arts training. Tasha pressed close to her mother's side, eyes wide as she watched the scene unfold. "Mom," Tasha whispered, "this isn't what they said it would be like." Renee observed the body language in the room. The twins controlled composure. The instructors barely contained fury. The deputy's threatening posture disguised as peacekeeping. All the talk of discipline and respect she'd heard during the sales pitch now revealed itself as a thin veneer over something ugly and primitive. Evan Sato kept his camera rolling, capturing everything. He drifted toward the front desk area, pretending to check his equipment while actually tracking Blaine and Maddox, who had drawn close together in what they thought was a private moment. "We need to handle this," Blaine muttered, his lips barely moving. "Can't have people thinking—" Maddox cut him off with a subtle head shake, then glanced meaningfully toward the dojo's security cameras mounted in the corners. Blaine followed his gaze and nodded slightly, understanding the unspoken message about what evidence might be useful later. The tension in the room stretched like an over-tightened wire. Several students shifted uncomfortably, looking between their instructors and the twins as if unsure which story to believe. The carefully maintained hierarchy of the dojo had been disrupted, and no one quite knew how to process it. Blaine suddenly clapped his hands together, his voice shifting to a sugary sweetness that fooled no one. "You know what? This gives me a wonderful idea." He pulled out his phone and began typing with theatrical flair. "Since you ladies are so passionate about fighting, why don't we make this official?" His fingers flew across the screen as he continued. "A proper exhibition match for the whole community. We'll call it, yes, the Unity Spar." He looked up with a predatory smile. "Let's show everyone your unique approach to martial arts." The post appeared on the dojo's social media with a bright ping. "There we go. All set for next Saturday. The whole town can watch and decide for themselves what real martial arts looks like." Some students started pulling out their phones, sharing and commenting on the post immediately. The manufactured drama spread through social media like wildfire, exactly as Blaine intended. Ms. Loretta stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chatter. "And what exactly are the terms of this Unity event?" "Oh, just a friendly demonstration," Blaine replied, his tone dripping honey over steel. "Unless, of course, these ladies aren't confident enough to prove their skills in front of a bigger audience." The twins exchanged a brief glance, decades of shared understanding passing between them in an instant. They recognized the trap being laid, refuse and be labeled cowards, accept and face whatever setup Blaine and his allies were planning. Deputy Maddox rocked back on his heels, thumbs hooked in his belt. "I'll be there myself," he announced. To ensure everyone's safety, of course. The dojo had become a pressure cooker of competing tensions. Blaine's manufactured charm, the black belt's simmering humiliation, the deputy's veiled threats, and the twins' unwavering composure. Even the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. The heavy door of Patriot Tiger Dojo slammed shut with a metallic clang that echoed across the parking lot. The evening air had grown thick and humid, typical for the Gulf Coast, making every breath feel like work. Security lights cast harsh shadows across the asphalt as the small group moved away from the building. Naomi immediately shifted into medic mode, her movements precise and practiced. She rolled her shoulders, testing for strain, then flexed her wrists methodically. Finding no serious damage, she turned her attention to Ms. Loretta. "Let me see where he hit you," Naomi said softly, examining the older woman's shoulder where Jace had accidentally bumped her. Her fingers moved with gentle efficiency, checking for swelling or restricted movement. "I'm fine, child," Loretta insisted, though she didn't pull away from the examination. "That boy's got less muscle than a wet newspaper." Nia turned to Evan, who was still holding his camera. "We need that footage backed up. Tonight." Her voice was low but intense. 3 separate places minimum. Cloud storage, physical drive, and somewhere offline. Evan nodded, already working with his equipment. "I can upload it now, then make copies at my studio. But," he glanced back at the dojo, "they're going to say you attacked first." They'll edit their security footage to show whatever story they want. That's why we need your clean version safe, Nia replied. Every angle, every second. Renee Caldwell stood slightly apart, one arm wrapped protectively around Tasha's shoulders. The teenager seemed to be trying to make herself as small as possible. Her usual confident posture collapsed inward. I should have said something sooner. Renee finally spoke up, her voice tight with suppressed anger. Those kids from Patriot Tiger, they've been after Tasha for weeks at school, following her between classes, knocking books out of her hands, calling her names. Tasha lifted her head slightly. They said I didn't belong in their advanced classes, that I should know my place. The teachers? Naomi asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. They say they don't see anything, Tasha replied bitterly. Or that I'm being too sensitive. Or that I need to understand some students are just more competitive. Loretta made a sound of disgust. Same old song, different decade. Renee squared her shoulders. Could you train her? Somewhere else? Somewhere safe? She looked between the twins. She needs to learn to defend herself, but not here. Not with them. Nia nodded slowly. We can teach her. But you both need to understand. This isn't going to stay just about fighting. Her eyes tracked back to the dojo's windows, where shadows still moved behind the blinds. Men like Blaine, they don't just lose and move on. They make it personal. They make it political. The whine of a car engine cut through the evening air. A patrol car rolled into view, moving at a crawl. Deputy Maddox sat behind the wheel, barely visible in the growing darkness. The spotlight mounted on his door swung across the group, lingering first on the twins, then on Ms. Loretta. When the harsh beam settled on Tasha, it stayed there. Seconds stretched out like taffy as the light pinned the teenager in place. Tasha instinctively stepped behind her mother, but the spotlight followed her movement. Renee shifted to block her daughter from view. That's enough, she called out, her voice carrying across the parking lot. We're leaving. The patrol car continued its slow crawl past them. Just before it turned the corner, Maddox killed the spotlight, plunging them back into the relative darkness of the security lights. Subtle, Loretta muttered. About as subtle as a brick through a window. Movement near the dojo's entrance caught their attention. One of the stripes, a tall man with a third-degree black belt, stood in the doorway, his uniform still crisp despite the humidity. Better enjoy tonight, he called out, his voice carrying clearly across the parking lot. Because, let me tell you something, permits get real complicated around here. Real complicated. Real fast. Naomi's hand found Tasha's shoulder, squeezing gently. Don't let them see you afraid, she whispered. That's what they want. They're going to come through paperwork next, Nia said, her voice hardening into something like steel. Permits, insurance, zoning, anything they can use to look legitimate while they try to shut us down. And when that doesn't work, they'll start spreading lies. The group stood together in the harsh glare of the security lights, the air heavy with more than just humidity. Around them, cars passed on the main road. People walked past shops. Life continued as normal. But in this parking lot, the normal veneer had cracked, revealing something darker underneath the town's polite surface. The stripe remained in the doorway, watching them with undisguised hostility. Behind him, more shadows moved in the dojo windows. Other students, perhaps, or Blaine himself, monitoring their every move. The message was clear. They were being watched, measured, assessed for weaknesses. Ms. Loretta straightened her spine, lifting her chin with quiet defiance. Evan kept his camera ready, though pointed at the ground. Renee held her daughter close, while Tasha slowly emerged from behind her mother's protection, finding her courage in increments. Streetlights cast long shadows across the empty parking lot as Nia pulled their SUV up to the community center. The clock on the dashboard read 11:42 p.m. They'd waited until late, hoping to avoid another confrontation while unloading supplies for tomorrow's class. "Look!" Naomi pointed toward their rented room. Even in the dim light, they could see the door wasn't fully closed. A thin strip of darkness showed where it should have been sealed tight against the frame. "We locked it ourselves this morning," Loretta said, her voice hard. "Triple-checked it. Nia killed the engine, but left the keys in." "Stay here," she started to say. But Naomi was already out of the car, moving with the quiet precision that revealed her military background. Loretta unbuckled her seatbelt with a determined click. "Don't you dare tell me to wait in the car like some child," she said. "I've been dealing with this nonsense since before you two were born." The twins exchanged a look, then nodded. They approached as a group, Nia taking point while Naomi covered their flanks. The door swung open with a touch, the lock mechanism clearly tampered with. The room stank of something sharp and chemical. Their eyes adjusted to reveal chaos. Papers scattered across the floor like confetti. Some shredded, others simply tossed. The supply box they'd left by the wall had been slashed open, foam padding spilling out through long knife cuts. Their carefully organized filing cabinet stood open, drawers ransacked. Loretta moved to the desk where they'd kept their donor list, local supporters who'd pledged equipment and funding. The manila folder was gone. "They're going after our money first," she said, disgust clear in her voice. "Cowards." Naomi examined the supply box, fingers tracing the knife marks. "These cuts are methodical. They took their time." "Because they knew nobody would stop them," Nia replied, already documenting the scene with her phone camera. Headlights swept across the windows as a vehicle pulled into the lot. Red and blue lights flashed once, a warning pulse. Then went dark. Heavy boots approached on the walkway. Deputy Maddox appeared in the doorway, filling it with his bulk. Behind him stood a thin man in a cheap suit, clutching a clipboard, trying to look important. "Evening, ladies," Maddox drawled, like he was surprised to find them there. "Got an anonymous complaint about unsafe combat training being conducted without proper licensing." He gestured to the man behind him. "This here's Mr. Peterson from the county inspector's office. He's going to need to take a look around." "At midnight?" Naomi asked quietly. "For a licensing complaint?" "Public safety doesn't keep office hours, ma'am." Maddox's smile was all teeth. "Especially when children might be at risk." Peterson shuffled forward, already scribbling on his forms. "I'll need to see your insurance documentation, training certifications, facility maintenance records." "Our room's been broken into," Nia cut in. "We need to report a burglary." Maddox made a show of looking around the room. "Looks more like general untidiness to me. Besides, what's missing? Some papers?" He shrugged. "Probably just got misplaced in all this disorder. Speaking of which, Mr. Peterson, make sure to note the unsafe conditions. All these scattered materials creating trip hazards." Loretta stepped forward, drawing herself up to her full height. "You know exactly what this is, Deputy. Don't pretend." "Ma'am, I'd advise against making unfounded accusations against a law enforcement officer." Maddox's voice dropped its false friendliness. "That kind of talk could be seen as threatening. Could complicate things even further." Naomi's phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression tightening. "They're moving fast," she said to Nia. "That edited video from the dojo is spreading. Comments are getting ugly." Nia glanced at her own phone. The clip had been cut to start with Naomi's takedown, removing all context of Jace's initial attack. The comment section was filled with thinly veiled racist remarks and calls for their program to be shut down. Another message came through, this one from Renee. "Tasha's locker vandalized. Principal says no cameras in that hall. They're calling it teenage pranks." As if on cue, Loretta's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then said tersely, "Yes, Reverend Williams. I understand the church board has concerns. No, I don't think hosting our seniors class would bring controversy to— She stopped, jaw tightening. I see. Well, you just tell them— My suggestion, Maddox interrupted, his voice dripping with false concern. Shut it down, voluntarily, before things get more complicated. Save everyone a lot of headaches. Peterson continued his inspection, marking violations with suspicious efficiency. Inadequate ventilation, unclear evacuation routes, potential fire code issues. Nia moved to an undamaged table and set down her phone. She opened a fresh document and began typing with methodical precision. Evidence log, entry 1, forced entry discovered at approximately 23:45. Naomi pulled out her own phone and started scrolling through contacts. Ms. Chen at the senior center saw everything at the dojo today. So did Mr. Martinez and Sarah from the coffee shop. She began making calls, her voice calm and professional. Hello, yes, I apologize for the late hour, but I need to confirm what you witnessed. Through the windows, they could see another patrol car pull into the lot. It parked with a clear view of the entrance, engine idling, a silent reminder that they were being watched. Morning sunlight streamed through the community center windows as Naomi watched Tasha practice her stance. The teenager's movements were becoming more confident, even after just a few sessions. Other students filtered out after class, chattering about lunch plans and weekend errands. Good work today, Naomi said, helping Tasha pack her gear. You're getting stronger. Tasha managed a small smile. The breathing stuff helps. I don't freeze up as much now. That's the foundation. Clear mind, controlled breathing, aware, but not afraid. Naomi shouldered her own bag. Come on, I'll drive you home. Across the room, Nia was setting up her laptop with Evan, spreading printouts of video stills across a folding table. They had hours of footage to analyze, looking for the exact frames Patriot Tiger's edited clip had removed. I'll catch up later, Nia called, not looking up from her work. Ms. Loretta's bringing more witness statements. The morning air was already thick with humidity as Naomi and Tasha walked to the car. Tasha kept close, eyes scanning the parking lot, a new habit since the locker incident. They pulled out onto Main Street, keeping to back roads to avoid the busier downtown area where Patriot Tiger's students often lounged outside the smoothie shop. Naomi noticed the patrol car in her rearview mirror 2 blocks before it lit up. She'd been expecting this. They all had. She pulled over smoothly, positioning the car so her dash cam had a clear view. Remember what we practiced, she said quietly to Tasha. Phone on record, hands visible, breathe steady. Deputy Maddox took his time approaching, boots crunching deliberately on loose gravel. He tapped the window with his knuckles, harder than necessary. License and registration. His tone was bored, rehearsed. Know why I stopped you? No, sir, I don't. Naomi's voice was neutral, her movements slow and clear as she retrieved her documents. Rolled through that stop sign back there. Maddox leaned down, peering past her at Tasha. And who's this? I'm driving her home from training, sir. Step out of the vehicle. It wasn't a request. Naomi complied, noting Tasha's sharp intake of breath. She kept her movements deliberate, non-threatening. Maddox directed her to stand by his patrol car, positioning her so the sun hit her eyes directly. Training, huh? He made a show of examining her license. You mean teaching kids to fight? We teach safety and self-defense, sir. De-escalation is our first priority. That's not what I saw on that video. He stepped closer. Looked more like you're teaching them to fight authority, to resist lawful commands. Naomi said nothing, maintaining steady eye contact despite the glare. She could see Tasha in her peripheral vision, phone held low, but recording. You got an attitude problem, Ms. Rowland? Maddox's voice dropped lower. Because attitude problems tend to multiply around here. Spread to other people. Create situations. No attitude, sir. Just exercising my right to teach legal self-defense skills to registered students. He circled her slowly, like he had at the dojo. Rights have limits, especially when someone's causing trouble, stirring things up, making the wrong kind of waves. He raised his voice. Young lady in the car, you can wait over here by this sign, in full view. Tasha's hands shook as she climbed out. Naomi watched her student try to control her breathing like they'd practiced, standing straight despite her fear. How many moving violations you think we could find if we started looking close? Maddox asked conversationally. Lot of stop signs in town, lot of speed limits. Lot of ways a car could be considered unsafe for transporting minors. The traffic stop dragged on for 20 minutes. Maddox ran her license repeatedly, called in her plates, checked her insurance, inspected her tires, all while keeping them standing in the growing heat. When he finally finished, his smile was cold. Just a warning this time. For the stop sign. He handed back her license. Drive careful now. Lots of concerned citizens watching out for suspicious behavior these days. Across town, Nia and Evan hunched over the laptop screen, analyzing the dojo footage frame by frame. The video timeline showed clear markers where cuts had been made. There, Evan pointed. See how it jumps? They edited out 2 full seconds before Naomi's takedown. Nia nodded grimly. The 2 seconds where Jace shoved Ms. Loretta and threw the first strike. They're painting us as the aggressors. The door burst open as Loretta stormed in, clutching a handful of papers. Her face was thunderous. They're threatening our donors now, she announced. Sarah's coffee shop suddenly needs a routine health inspection. The hardware store got a visit about their loading zone permit. Even my church board president got a friendly reminder about tax exemption paperwork. Nia kept working as she listened, documenting each new incident. They're following the playbook. Isolate, intimidate, suffocate. But we're still training, Loretta said firmly. Had 6 new students sign up this morning, parents who saw what really happened. They continued through the afternoon. More students arrived for the evening session. Nia and Naomi taught with focused intensity, emphasizing situational awareness and safe disengagement. They showed everyone how to document incidents, when to record, how to protect footage. Keep your phones charged, Naomi instructed. Know your exits. Stay aware, but not afraid. Travel in pairs when you can, Nia added. Share locations with people you trust. As the last student left, they found the notice taped to their door. Official city letterhead, crisp black ink. Permit under review. Operations may be suspended, pending investigation. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Nia guided Calvin through a gentle wrist escape. The 71-year-old veteran moved with careful determination, his weathered hands following her instructions. Across the community room, Naomi demonstrated balance recovery techniques with Martha, another senior student, while Ms. Loretta coached breathing patterns. That's it, Nia encouraged. Remember, it's not about strength. Let their push work against them. Engine sounds growled outside, multiple vehicles pulling up with deliberately excessive revving. Through the windows, leather-jacketed figures emerged from modified trucks, their Patriot Tiger patches visible even in the dim parking lot lighting. "Hey, military ladies," a voice called out mockingly. "Come show us those fancy moves." Nia kept teaching, her voice steady despite the rising chants outside. "Now pivot your weight here, Calvin. Stay centered." "Look at them hiding," another voice jeered. "Big tough soldiers scared to fight without cameras?" The seniors tensed, but continued their drills. Ms. Loretta's face hardened as she recognized Jace's voice among the taunts. The stripes circled the building, engines revving louder, shouting growing more aggressive. "Y'all think you're special with your combat training?" The words dripped with contempt. "Come prove it." Naomi touched Martha's shoulder reassuringly. Focus on your form. They're just making noise. Earlier that day, Naomi had visited Thompson's sports supply for athletic tape and basic first aid supplies. Mr. Thompson, who'd sold her equipment just weeks ago, suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. Sorry, we're, out of stock, he'd mumbled, though she could see rolls of tape on the shelf behind him. When will you get more in? Naomi had asked evenly. Look, Thompson had lowered his voice. Y'all bring trouble. Nothing personal, just business. Try the store in Milton County. The rejection stung, but it wasn't the worst of the day. At the Sunshine Diner, Calvin had stopped for his usual coffee and eggs, proudly wearing his program t-shirt. He'd barely settled into his booth when it started. Thought this place had standards, a Stripe commented loudly. Now they're serving race traders? The waitress looked away as someone accidentally jostled Calvin's table, spilling hot coffee across his lap. His breakfast plate crashed to the floor moments later. Eggs scattered across his shoes. Oops, another voice sneered. Better learn your place, old man. Naomi had arrived to find Calvin standing outside, hands shaking, dignity wounded worse than any physical blow. She'd helped him to her car, jaw clenched so tight it trembled, fury contained only by years of training. Now, watching the seniors practice despite the intimidation outside, Naomi felt that same controlled anger rising. These were people's grandparents being terrorized for daring to learn self-defense. Nia moved silently through the room, phone in hand, methodically documenting license plates and faces through the windows. Each photo, timestamp, and location went into her growing evidence file. The Stripes might be performing for reaction, but she was building a case. Evan arrived through the back door, camera bag clutched tight. His usually confident posture was deflated. They got to my biggest client, he said quietly. The real estate company. They do all the luxury property videos. Said if I keep filming for you, I'll never get another local contract. You don't have to stay, Naomi told him. We understand. No, I'm staying. Evan squared his shoulders. Just wanted you to know what we're up against. The seniors continued their drills, determined not to be driven out. Martha practiced her balance recovery, while Calvin refined his wrist escapes. Ms. Loretta led breathing exercises, her voice rising above the engine noise outside. The first brick crashed through the window at 8:47 p.m. Glass sprayed across the floor as seniors scrambled back. Nia was already moving, phone recording, while Naomi checked for injuries. Ms. Loretta shepherded students away from the windows. The note attached was typed, but the threat was clear. Leave before someone gets hurt. Engines roared as the Stripes peeled out of the parking lot, their laughter carrying on the night air. Nia photographed the brick, the note, the glass pattern. She noted the exact time, angle of impact, and direction of the vehicle's departure. Everyone all right? Naomi asked, checking each student carefully. No one was hit by the flying glass, but the fear in their eyes cut deeper than any physical wound. Calvin stood straighter, brushing glass dust from his program shirt. We're not leaving, he declared. They don't get to win like this. Martha nodded firmly. My grandkids come to this neighborhood. I'm learning to protect them. And no bunch of bullies is going to stop me. Evan filmed the aftermath methodically, making sure to capture the brick's trajectory and the tire marks outside. Every detail could matter later. Ms. Loretta began sweeping up glass, her movements precise and angry. They think they can scare us with playground tactics? Please. I've seen worse than this, and I'm still here. The twins exchanged a look. Years of operational experience conveying volumes in a glance. They helped clean up the glass, filed a police report they knew would go nowhere, and continued teaching. The message was clear. Threats wouldn't drive them out. The afternoon sun cast long shadows behind the library, as Evan paced nervously, checking over his shoulder every few steps. Nia stood perfectly still against the brick wall, her posture relaxed but her eyes constantly scanning the parking lot. When Evan finally approached, his hands trembled slightly as he pulled a small thumb drive from his jacket. "I almost deleted it twice," he whispered, passing the drive to Nia like it might burn him. "What they're doing in there, it's not right." Nia slipped the drive into her pocket with practiced smoothness. "Tell me everything you saw. Details matter." Evan ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "They call it mentor night. Sounds nice, right? Parents think it's leadership training. But they separate the kids, especially the younger ones. Take their phones. Close the doors. Who runs it?" Nia's voice remained steady, but her fingers tightened slightly. "Blaine leads the main group, but there's this other guy. Suit, expensive watch. He stands in the back, watching. Takes notes." Evan pulled out his camera, hands steadier now as he showed Nia specific timestamps. "Look at this." The footage showed Blaine addressing a group of teens, his charismatic smile firmly in place. "Discipline means loyalty," he was saying. "And loyalty means being willing to prove yourself." Behind him, the man in the suit collected envelopes from other adults, counting contents with practiced efficiency. "They pair older students with younger ones," Evan continued. "Call it accountability partners. But it's really about making sure the new kids follow orders." I caught one conversation. They were assigning specific students to harass, specific lockers to hit. Nia's face remained composed, but something shifted behind her eyes. A coldness that came from recognizing patterns she'd hoped never to see again. The coded phrases, the hierarchy, the careful documentation of compliance. It was all horrifyingly familiar. Across town, in a quiet corner of the community center, Naomi sat with Malik Dawson. The 16-year-old kept his voice low, eyes darting toward the door as he spoke. "They said I had to prove I was serious about training," Malik explained, his fingers twisting the hem of his shirt. "Started small, leaving notes in lockers, following kids home to scare them. Then they wanted pictures of us doing it, proof we weren't weak." Naomi took careful notes, her handwriting steady even as her heart ached. "What happened with Tasha's locker?" Malik's shoulders hunched. "They gave me the combination, said it was a test, said if I didn't do it." He swallowed hard. "There's this video they have of my little sister walking to school. They showed me. Said accidents happen if people don't understand discipline." Naomi documented everything. Names, dates, specific threats. Her medical training helped her note the signs of stress, elevated pulse, shallow breathing, constant scanning for exits. "We can protect you," she said softly, even as she recognized the weight of that promise against a system designed to silence. At the First Baptist Church, Ms. Loretta had mobilized her networks with fierce efficiency. Church women worked in shifts, preparing meals and creating safe spaces for teens who were afraid to go home. They didn't ask questions when kids showed up with bruised knuckles or tear-stained faces. "My grandson used to love that dojo," Mrs. Henderson whispered to Loretta as she packed another lunch. "Now he jumps when phones ring." "What kind of discipline breaks children?" "The kind that's about power, not teaching," Loretta replied, her voice hard with conviction. She'd seen this before, systems that used respect as a weapon, tradition as a chain. Back at the library, Nia reviewed more of Evan's footage. The camera caught moments of harsh correction, students forced to hold stress positions while reciting loyalty oaths, younger kids watching wide-eyed as older ones demonstrated what happened to troublemakers. "There's money moving through there," Evan noted. "Big amounts. The suit guy keeps records, but not on paper. Some kind of encrypted tablet. And look at this." He showed another clip where Deputy Maddox arrived late at night, speaking closely with Blaine, while pointing at student files. "We need to show everyone," Naya decided, her tactical mind already mapping out angles. "A public event, something they can't ignore or edit away. Security footage, medical records, witness statements, all of it displayed where the whole town can see." The twins began planning a fundraiser showcase, demonstrations of actual self-defense, testimonials from parents and seniors, and carefully curated evidence of the dojo's true operation. They would invite the local press, ensure multiple cameras rolled from different angles, make the truth too visible to bury. They chose the community center's main hall, coordinating with Loretta to rally support. Evan prepared his equipment, determined to capture everything from multiple angles. Malik agreed to speak, his voice shaking but determined, and other students slowly came forward with their own stories. Naomi was reviewing the event layout when Nia spotted movement near their entrance. A city worker in a fluorescent vest stood casually by his truck, but his camera was aimed directly at their door, photographing everyone who entered or left. The twins recognized the tactic, documentation for targeted harassment later, proof of who needed to be taught respect. The workers' presence confirmed what they already knew. The system's roots ran deep, and exposing the truth would trigger more than just Blaine's anger. But watching Malik help Tasha with her self-defense stance, seeing seniors practice their techniques without fear, the twins knew there was no turning back. The community hall hummed with energy as the evening program began. Ms. Loretta stood at the entrance, her silver hair catching the fluorescent light as she greeted each senior with a warm hug and a program pamphlet. The walls were decorated with simple photos showing students of all ages practicing safe falls and escapes. No flashy kicks or aggressive poses, just careful technique and focused faces. "Welcome, welcome," Loretta called out, her voice carrying that church lady authority that made everyone stand a little straighter. "Find your seats, family. We've got real truth to share tonight." Renee Caldwell arrived with a group of parents, their whispered conversations carrying an edge of nervous hope. Some clutched donation envelopes, others held phones ready to record. They'd seen their kids coming home stronger lately, not with bruises and attitude, but with straight spines and calm eyes. Near the front row, Tasha Green sat with her hands clasped tight in her lap. Malik Dawson slid into the chair beside her, both teens radiating tension. Neither spoke, but they shared a quick glance of understanding. They'd been through too much at Patriot Tiger to relax fully, even here. "Everyone take a deep breath." Naomi's steady voice filled the room as she stepped to the center. "Look around. No one's here to be brave alone tonight." The simple statement loosened something in the atmosphere. Shoulders relaxed. Smiles emerged. The twins had spent weeks teaching that exact lesson. Strength wasn't about facing fear in isolation, but about standing together. Nia moved through the space with deliberate calm, checking sightlines and exits. She nodded to Evan as he positioned his fourth camera, each one covering a different angle. What the audience couldn't see was the hidden laptop in his bag, streaming everything to a secure cloud server. The program opened with Calvin Price, age 71, demonstrating how to break a grip on his wrist. His movements were smooth, practiced. "Last month, I would have panicked," he told the crowd. "Now I know exactly what to do, and that knowledge itself keeps me safer." Other seniors followed, sharing stories of newfound confidence. Mrs. Henderson described walking to her car without fear. Mr. Washington explained how he taught his grandkids to be aware without being afraid. The teens demonstrated next, showing simple but effective drills. No flying kicks or showy moves, just practical techniques for creating space, staying aware, and getting to safety. Tasha led a sequence on breaking holds, her voice clear and strong as she explained each step. Danny Wells, the regional journalist, sat in the back row taking constant notes. She'd arrived wearing skepticism like armor, but her expression shifted as she interviewed attendee after attendee. Each story aligned, not in practiced perfection, but in the messy, real way truth tends to echo. She watched the twins closely, noting how they never pushed for dramatic statements or emotional displays. "They don't teach us to fight," one mother told Danny. "They teach us to be strong enough not to need to." Donations began flowing steadily. Parents wrote checks. Seniors contributed what they could. A local business owner stood up and publicly pledged monthly support. The energy in the room transformed from nervous hope to genuine respect. "This isn't charity," Loretta announced proudly. "This is community investing in itself." The door swung open with theatrical timing. Blaine Harker strode in, all camera-ready smile and practiced charm. He wore his black belt like a crown, the red stripes catching the light as he moved toward the twins. A large check protruded from his jacket pocket, clearly meant to be seen. "Ladies," he said loudly, extending his hand toward Nia. "Patriot Tiger believes in community support. Let me show everyone how real martial artists handle friendly competition." The room tensed. Everyone recognized the trap. Accept his money and validate his authority, or refuse and look ungrateful. Cameras lifted, waiting. Nia met his gaze with practiced calm. "We appreciate the gesture," she said clearly, "but our program runs on student fees and family donations. We believe in sustainable support, not public spectacle." Before Blaine's smile could fully curdle, the back door opened again. Deputy Maddox entered with 2 uniformed officers, their hands resting casually on their belts. They spread out, scanning the crowd like they expected trouble instead of senior citizens and teenagers. Naomi stepped up to the podium, a flash drive in her hand. The screen behind her flickered to life, ready to show the unedited footage of harassment, intimidation, and coded threats that Evan had captured. "Before we continue," she began, "I want everyone to see exactly why this program matters." "Stop right there!" Maddox's voice cut through the room like a blade. "We received a credible tip about weapons on the premises." The officers moved toward the supply tables, where water bottles, first aid kits, and demonstration pads were neatly arranged. The room erupted in confused murmurs as Maddox raised his hand for silence. "Everyone stay seated," he commanded, his badge catching the light. "This is now an active investigation scene." "Everyone against the wall!" Maddox's voice cracked like a whip. "Now!" Confusion rippled through the crowd as officers herded seniors and teens toward the walls. Blaine leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold with the satisfied smirk of a producer whose show was going exactly as planned. "But my grandmother can't stand that long," Tasha protested, supporting Mrs. Henderson, who trembled with arthritis. "I said everyone!" Maddox barked, making the girl flinch. The third officer approached the supply table with exaggerated caution, lifting sealed boxes one by one. Naomi's eyes narrowed as she tracked his movements, the way he seemed to know exactly which box to check, how he barely glanced at the others. "Well, well," he announced, pulling out a hunting knife that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Look what we have here." Maddox seized the moment like a performer hitting his mark. "This is a dangerous weapon in a room full of children," he declared, voice pitched to Carrie. "Who's responsible for these supplies?" "That box was sealed when we arrived," Naomi said firmly. "We need proper chain of custody documentation." "That knife wasn't—" Maddox moved with practiced speed, grabbing Naomi's wrist and twisting it behind her back. She could have countered. They all knew she could have, but the room was full of witnesses ready to call any resistance assault on an officer. "Stop resisting!" Maddox commanded loudly, though Naomi stood perfectly still. "This is harassment. Loretta's voice cut through the tension. The elderly woman stepped forward, church lady authority squaring her shoulders. We all know what's really— Ma'am, stay back. An officer shoved hard, too hard for a woman of her age. Loretta fell backward, gasping as she hit the ground. The sound of her impact shattered the room's last restraint. Seniors cried out in shock. Parents surged forward. Teens shouted in anger. The space erupted into panic and screaming. "Everyone calm down!" Maddox shouted over the chaos, still performing his control hold on Naomi. "This is now a criminal investigation." Danny Wells raised her phone, trying to capture the scene, but a deputy stepped directly in front of her lens. "No recording," he said. "For everyone's safety." "Freedom of the press," Danny countered, attempting to step around him. "Ma'am, interfering with an investigation is a serious offense." Across the room, Nia's face went utterly still. Not angry, something far more dangerous. She looked at Evan and gave a tiny nod. He responded by tapping his laptop bag, confirming the backup stream was active. Nia's eyes moved with surgical precision, cataloging every face, every action, every detail of how this trap had been sprung. "These women have been inciting violence," Blaine announced to the room, his voice dripping with fake concern. "Teaching dangerous techniques to vulnerable seniors, radicalizing our youth." "That's a lie!" Calvin Price shouted, but his voice shook with fear rather than just anger. "Sir, please stay against the wall," an officer warned. Naomi kept her breathing steady as Maddox maintained the hold, knowing any reaction would just feed their narrative. She watched helplessly as Renee and another parent helped Loretta into a chair. The elderly woman clutched her hip, face tight with pain. "The program is suspended pending investigation," Maddox declared. "Everyone needs to clear the premises immediately." Parents grabbed their children and hurried out, faces averted in shame or fear. Seniors who had written checks minutes ago now shuffled away, avoiding eye contact. The room emptied like someone had pulled a plug, leaving only fear and confusion in its wake. "You're going to be detained for questioning," Maddox informed the twins, finally releasing Naomi's wrist. "Turn around slowly." More officers arrived, filling out paperwork with practiced efficiency. They knew their roles in this performance. The weapons charge would probably be dropped later, but the damage was already done. The twins' reputation, their program, their community's trust, all shattered in minutes. Through it all, Nia maintained that dangerous stillness. She complied with every order, her movements precise and controlled. But her eyes never stopped tracking, never stopped recording every detail of this orchestrated takedown. Hours later, after questioning and processing, after watching their program get officially suspended, after seeing Loretta loaded into an ambulance, the twins stood alone in the dark parking lot, their breath fogged in the cold night air. Nia reached into the trunk of their car and pulled out an old metal lockbox, its surface scratched with age. The metal felt heavy with more than just weight. "We didn't come here by accident," she told her sister, her voice carrying years of classified operations and carefully buried history. The broken glass crunched under their feet as they entered the community room. The midnight darkness made the vandalism look worse. Shattered windows, scattered papers, and long shadows that seemed to mock their earlier hopes. Nia flicked on the lights, revealing Evan already setting up his laptop on a folding table. Renee guided Tasha to a chair, the teenager's shoulders still trembling from the night's events. Naomi swept glass fragments into a neat pile, her movements precise, even in cleanup. "We should have told you sooner," Nia said finally, breaking the heavy silence. She pulled out an unmarked folder from the lockbox, its edges worn from years of handling. "This isn't just about a corrupt dojo or a bad cop." "What do you mean?" Renee asked, her nurse's instincts making her lean forward, alert to the shift in Nia's tone. Nia spread several documents on the table, careful to avoid the glass. 8 years ago, Naomi and I weren't just military. We were part of a classified internal investigation team. She pointed to heavily redacted papers bearing official seals. We tracked networks of extremist groups infiltrating community organizations, law enforcement, and local government. Like, what's happening here? Evan asked, his camera forgotten for the moment. Exactly like here, Naomi confirmed, pausing her cleanup. The patterns are identical. They start with respected community spaces, dojos, gun clubs, youth programs, places that already have discipline and hierarchy built in. Then they identify vulnerable people, Nia continued. Teens who need belonging, adults who want power, seniors who feel forgotten. They create a pipeline of loyalty through fear and favor. Tasha hugged herself tighter. Like how the Stripes recruited Malik. Made him hurt people to prove himself? Yes. Naomi's voice softened. They break you down, then build you back up their way. Make you think their protection is all you have. But why here? Renee asked. Why this town? Nia pulled out a map marked with neat red circles. Because small towns with tourist economies are perfect cover. Everyone knows everyone. Power stays concentrated, and outsiders cycle through too quickly to notice patterns. She traced a line between marked locations. We tracked similar networks across 3 states before the operation was shut down. Shut down? Evan looked up from his laptop. Why? Naomi's face hardened. Because we got too close to people who couldn't be touched. Judges, commissioners, business leaders, pillars of the community who made everything else possible. We tried to live quietly after that, Nia admitted. Thought we could just teach basic self-defense, help people feel safer. Her fingers traced the edge of a redacted document. But we recognized the signs as soon as we arrived. The way Blaine's students patrol certain streets. How Maddox's traffic stops target specific people. The courthouse's perfect coordination. That's why you document everything, Evan realized. Why you're so careful about camera angles and backup footage. Because they fight with paperwork and procedure, Naomi confirmed. They make the system itself the weapon. Renee stood up, pacing with nervous energy. So what do we do? They've already suspended the program, turned people against us. We stop reacting, Nia said firmly. We take control of the board. She pulled out fresh papers, laying them out like battle plans. Every permit gets filed in triplicate, through different channels. Every witness gets trained in proper documentation. Every camera has 3 backups. Evan opened his laptop, showing a network diagram. I can set up redundant live streams, he offered. Cloud storage they can't access, feeds they can't kill. I'll organize the parents, Renee added, her voice finding strength. Not just to watch, but to record, to escort, to be visible witnesses. We'll need it, Naomi warned, because they're going to escalate. The humiliation didn't work. The permit game didn't work. The weapons plant failed. They'll get desperate. Good, Nia said coldly. Desperate people make mistakes. And this time, we'll be ready to catch every single one. Tasha straightened in her chair. What about Malik and the other kids they're using? We protect them, Naomi assured her. Give them safe ways to step back. Document their stories if they're willing to talk. But carefully, Nia cautioned. Because this goes higher than Blaine or Maddox. Someone's protecting them, coordinating responses, making charges disappear. She unfolded a larger map of the county, spreading it across the table. Red lines connected police stations, courthouses, business districts, a web of influence and control. Her finger traced each connection, each point of pressure, until it settled on one name at the center. The first light of dawn began creeping through the broken windows as Nia picked up a marker. With deliberate precision, she drew a circle around the name that made everything else possible. Judge Harland Pike. The room fell silent, the weight of what they faced settling over them like the morning shadows. They weren't just fighting a corrupt dojo or a bad cop anymore. They were challenging a system built to protect itself, anchored by people who never had to throw a single punch to maintain their power. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps as Naomi approached the entrance, manila folder thick with documentation tucked under her arm. Nia stood slightly behind, her eyes methodically scanning the building's facade like she was mapping defensive positions. The marble entrance hall echoed with their footsteps. A security guard watched them pass through the metal detector, his hand resting too casually on his belt. Naomi noted his name tag, Officer Phillips. She'd add it to their growing list. At the clerk's window, a heavy-set woman with carefully styled gray hair barely looked up from her computer. Her nameplate read, Mrs. Dorothy Wilkins. "I need to file these complaints," Naomi said, sliding the folder forward, including the incident report from last night. Mrs. Wilkins flipped through the pages with obvious disinterest. "System's running slow today. Might take a while to process these." "I'll wait," Naomi replied pleasantly, pulling out her own documentation log. "And I'll need receipts for each filing, please, with timestamps." The clerk's fingers paused on the keyboard. "That's not our usual procedure." "It's within my rights to request it," Naomi said, her voice remaining soft but unmistakably firm. She placed carbon paper and a receipt book on the counter. "I brought my own forms to make it easier." Behind her, Nia observed the morning traffic flow. A man in an expensive suit, she recognized him as Blaine's fixer, James Morton, exchanged familiar nods with 3 different court employees. 2 deputies who'd been at last night's raid lounged by the water fountain, their eyes following Naomi's movements. Mrs. Wilkins shuffled papers between arbitrary piles. "These might need to be reviewed for proper formatting." "The formatting meets state requirements," Naomi said. "I've included relevant statute numbers on each page." She tapped the first document. "Starting with the illegal search conducted without probable cause." The clerk's face tightened. "I'll need to check with my supervisor." "Of course," Naomi smiled. "I'll document that request too." She made a careful note in her log, including the time. Nia watched a cluster of lawyers greet each other with backslaps and insider jokes. Their laughter carried across the marble floors, but their eyes kept darting toward the clerk's window. Word was spreading. The twins weren't backing down. The main doors swung open, and Judge Harland Pike strode in. He moved like he owned the building, silver hair perfectly coiffed, his presence commanding immediate respect. Blaine Harker walked beside him, their conversation appearing casual and warm. "Patriot Tiger is a blessing to this community," Pike announced, his voice pitched to carry. "The discipline you instill in our youth, Blaine, it's exactly what we need in these troubled times." Blaine ducked his head in false modesty. "Just trying to maintain standards, Your Honor." Pike turned, sweeping the hall with his practiced judicial gaze, and froze for a fraction of a second when he saw the twins. Something flashed behind his eyes. Recognition, then alarm, quickly masked by professional courtesy. "Ah, our new instructors," he recovered smoothly. "I trust you're finding our little town welcoming?" "Parts of it," Naomi replied evenly, not looking up from her documentation. Pike's perfect smile wavered. Nia caught it, that microscopic tell of a man realizing his power might not be absolute. Mrs. Wilkins returned with a supervisor, who began examining their complaints with exaggerated thoroughness. "There seem to be some irregularities. The irregularities are why we're filing," Naomi said. "Please note the witness statements on pages 4 through 7. Outside the clerk's window, the morning routine continued. Staff members exchanged significant looks. Papers shuffled between offices. Phone calls were made in hushed tones. The courthouse performed its choreographed dance of bureaucratic obstruction. Deputy Maddox materialized beside Naomi, close enough that she could smell his aftershave. "Quite a stack of paperwork there," he said softly. "Just exercising my rights as a citizen," Naomi replied, continuing to write in her log. "You know?" Maddox leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You might want to consider the bigger picture. Do you really want to be the kind of woman everybody regrets?" Naomi turned to face him fully, her movements unhurried and precise. "I want the truth on record, Deputy Maddox." She held his gaze. Every incident, every witness, every pattern of behavior that can't be explained away. Nia noticed Judge Pike watching this exchange, his expression calculating. He whispered something to his clerk, who hurried away with purpose. The supervisor finally began stamping their complaints, unable to find legitimate reasons to reject them. Naomi insisted on copies of everything, methodically checking each timestamp and signature. "Perhaps," Pike called across the hall, his voice dropping its public warmth, "we should discuss this situation privately. For everyone's good." Nia moved closer to her sister, her voice barely a breath. "He just confirmed he's involved." The morning sun had climbed higher, eliminating the shadows from the courthouse steps. But inside, beneath the polished marble and practiced smiles, darker currents were stirring. Every stamped form, every documented exchange, every careful observation was another crack in the system's facade of respectability. Mrs. Wilkins slid the final receipt across the counter, her dismissive attitude unable to hide the tension in her movements. The twins had come armed with paperwork instead of fists, and somehow that felt more dangerous to everyone watching. The afternoon sun filtered through the community center's windows as Loretta James sat in her cushioned chair, neck brace firm, but her spirit unbroken. Her phone never stopped ringing as she coordinated with church members and community leaders. "Yes, Sister Watson, we need those chairs delivered by 4, Loretta directed, her voice strong despite her injury. "And tell Brother Marcus to bring his camera. The good one with the timestamp feature." Across the room, Nia and Naomi had transformed the space into a command center. Papers covered folding tables, permits in triplicate, medical waivers, safety protocols, and detailed floor plans. Evan Sato tested camera angles, while Danny Wells interviewed witnesses, her recorder catching every word. "Walk me through the recruitment again," Danny said to Malik, who sat nervously picking at his sleeve. "What exactly happened after regular classes?" "They'd separate certain students," Malik explained, his voice low. "Take us to the back room. Blaine would talk about how we needed to prove ourselves, show real loyalty. Started small, spreading rumors about people they didn't like. Then it got worse." Naomi approached, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "You're doing great, Malik. Remember, we have security measures in place. No one gets near you without going through us first." Nia stood at a whiteboard, mapping out positions. "Medical station here," she marked with precise strokes. "Legal observers along this wall. Parent witnesses form a line here, visible but protected. Every exit covered by 2 cameras minimum. I've got 3 separate live stream setups," Evan reported, adjusting a hidden lens. "Main feed, backup system, and emergency units that upload automatically if anything gets disrupted. Plus 15 parents with phones ready to record." Renee Caldwell entered with a group of determined-looking parents, each carrying notepads. "We've got 25 confirmed for the witness line," she announced. All briefed on proper documentation procedures. Naomi gathered everyone for training, her voice calm but commanding. "Remember, no physical engagement with deputies. If they move to clear an area, step back smoothly and continue recording. Protect our elders by staying close, but never touch law enforcement. Keep your phones at chest level, steady, and always show timestamps." "What about when they try to provoke us?" a parent asked. "They will try," Nia confirmed. "That's their pattern. But we maintain discipline. Every taunt, every shove, Every accident gets documented. No reactions, just evidence. Danny flipped through her notes. This goes deeper than a gym rivalry. I'm seeing systematic intimidation, abuse of authority, targeted harassment of minorities and seniors. The fight angle is just the surface. Exactly, Nia nodded. The exhibition is bait. They need to prove dominance publicly. But our real goal is exposing the network behind it. Naomi demonstrated proper recording technique to the group. Wide angle first, then zoom in on badges, faces, and any physical contact. Keep your elbows tucked for stability. If someone blocks your view, calmly shift position. Don't argue. Loretta directed traffic from her chair, coordinating with church volunteers. Sister Jenkins is bringing water stations. Deacon Brown's handling parking security. And Reverend Walsh agreed to open with a prayer. Adds respectability they can't easily dismiss. Permits are filed in triplicate, Nia reported, showing the stamped papers. One set to City Hall, one to the county office, one to our lawyer. Plus digital copies sent to 5 separate emails. Nothing disappears this time. Evan tested his backup systems, screens showing multiple angles of the room. Main cameras here and here, hidden units in these corners, automated uploads every 30 seconds. They can't shut down all the feeds. And I've got 3 outside journalists coming, Danny added, plus a contact at the state paper. This won't be buried as local news. Naomi worked with a group of seniors, teaching them safe observation positions. Stay behind the marker line. If anyone approaches aggressively, step back and call out, "Witness present." Don't engage beyond that. Parents practice their documentation routine, forming lines, maintaining spaces, keeping phones ready but not obvious. Renee moved among them, checking positions and sight lines. Remember, Nia addressed the room, they expect chaos. They want fear. We give them calm precision instead. Every move documented, every witness protected, every procedure followed exactly. Malik's phone buzzed. A message from Blaine appeared on screen. The boy's hand shook slightly as he read it aloud. Looking forward to teaching some respect at your little charity show. Time to remind everyone why we're the only real martial arts school in town. The Stripes were already posting online, calling for supporters to attend, promising to shut down these frauds once and for all. Their confident taunts showed they still didn't understand what they were facing. They think it's about fighting, Naomi observed quietly. Let them keep thinking that. Danny finished another witness interview, her expression grim but determined. I'm not writing about a gym fight. I'm exposing systematic abuse of power and the infrastructure that enables it. The exhibition is just where it all becomes visible. Loretta made another call, her voice carrying across the room. Yes, Bishop, we need your legal observers there early. These folks don't play fair, but we're going to play smart. The afternoon light shifted as people continued preparing, checking equipment, reviewing positions, practicing their roles. Every detail was accounted for, every contingency planned. The twins had transformed a trap into a stage, and the players were all in position. The community center buzzed with electric tension as people packed the venue shoulder to shoulder. Folding chairs lined the walls, where seniors sat, protected by a ring of watchful parents. Phone cameras glinted everywhere, held steady at chest height, just as they'd practiced. Nia and Naomi stood calm near the mat's edge, wearing simple black uniforms without rank markings. Across the room, Blaine preened in his decorated uniform, surrounded by his stripes, who swaggered and stretched with exaggerated movements. Deputy Maddox positioned officers at key points, trying to block camera angles, but the witnesses simply adjusted their positions as rehearsed. Judge Pike sat in the front row, maintaining his grandfatherly smile while his eyes darted between faces. "Live stream confirmed," Evan murmured into his headset, checking multiple screens. Main feed and all backups running. Danny Wells stood nearby, microphone ready, speaking quietly into her recorder as she documented the scene. Renee guided Tasha and Malik to their observation posts, where they could record safely behind the parent line. "Remember," she whispered, "no matter what happens, stay in position and keep filming." The referee called both sides to the center. Jace bounced aggressively, smirking at the twins while Blaine laid out the exhibition rules with theatrical courtesy. "Simple sparring," he announced for the cameras. "Clean techniques only. Show these folks the difference between real martial arts and whatever this is." His pause drew snickers from his supporters. Naomi stepped forward first, her movements precise and controlled. Jace circled her with predatory confidence, testing with quick jabs that she deflected smoothly. The first exchange looked almost professional, until Blaine's hand twitched in a subtle signal. Jace's entire demeanor shifted. His next grip locked illegally around Naomi's throat. She broke it cleanly, but he was already launching a knee strike banned under the rules. The crowd tensed as Naomi evaded, maintaining discipline despite the escalation. "Notice the illegal contact," Danny spoke clearly into her mic. "Exhibition rules specifically prohibited throat attacks and knee strikes to standing opponents." Blaine signaled again. Jace threw a deliberate elbow toward Naomi's temple, a potentially lethal strike in exhibition sparring. She started to slip it, but he caught her with a brutal follow-up that connected hard. Naomi stumbled, vision blurring, and legitimate gasps of concern rippled through the crowd. Maddox leaned forward, hand resting on his belt, clearly waiting for any excuse to intervene. His smirk said he expected the twins to finally lose control. Instead, Nia stepped onto the mat with cold precision. Her face showed no rage, but her movements had shifted from exhibition to efficiency. She cut angles that trapped Jace's forward momentum, redirecting his wild swings into empty air. Each time he charged, she degraded his balance further. "Watch closely," Danny narrated. "No excessive force being used, just positional control against increasingly dangerous attacks." Jace launched another illegal combination. This time, Nia shut it down definitively. A swift trap of his lead leg, a precise sweep, and a controlled takedown that pinned him flat. She held position, applying just enough pressure to immobilize without injury, then released the instant the referee called break. Blaine's face contorted with fury. He lunged toward the mat, and his stripes surged forward as one unit. The crowd's murmurs turned fearful as the situation teetered toward chaos. "Kill the stream!" Maddox barked at his deputies. "Security issue! Shut it all down now!" But Evan's hidden cameras kept rolling, catching everything. In the commotion, Pike's fixer moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility. Multiple angles showed him pressing cash into Maddox's hand, leaning close to whisper instructions. "We are currently witnessing an attempted cover-up," Danny announced into her mic, her voice carrying clearly over the noise. "Deputy Maddox appears to be receiving payment and directions from Judge Pike's known associate, while attempting to suppress video evidence." The fixer froze. Maddox's hand tightened on the cash, and Judge Pike's carefully maintained mask of respectability cracked as he realized what was happening. "For any state investigators watching this live feed," Danny continued professionally, "I'm observing multiple violations of exhibition safety protocols, attempted suppression of evidence, and what appears to be an exchange of funds between law enforcement and judicial staff during an active incident." The room's atmosphere transformed as her words registered. Phone cameras swiveled to capture Pike's expression, Maddox's obvious discomfort, and the fixer's attempted retreat. The Stripes' aggressive posturing deflated as they realized their usual immunity might not apply. "All feeds still broadcasting," Evan confirmed quietly. State Oversight Office is acknowledging receipt of the live stream. Blaine's rage shifted to desperate calculation as he watched his power base crumble in real time. The twins maintained their disciplined stance, neither advancing nor retreating, while dozens of witnesses recorded every reaction. Pike stood abruptly, his face ashen as Danny repeated, "To confirm for our state-level viewers, this is happening right now, broadcast live from multiple verified sources." The wail of sirens cut through the tension as official vehicles converged on the community center. Red and blue lights strobed through the windows, casting shifting shadows across faces that had witnessed history unfold. Two paramedics pushed through the crowd with professional urgency, their gear rattling as they approached Naomi. Nia supported her sister's weight, one hand steady on Naomi's back, while the medics began their assessment. "Track my finger," one instructed, shining a penlight across Naomi's vision. "Any nausea?" "Dizziness," Naomi responded clearly, but winced at the light's movement. State investigators in plainclothes dispersed through the space with practiced efficiency, separating key witnesses and securing evidence. Two agents approached Deputy Maddox, who suddenly found his commanding presence deserting him. "This is a local matter," Maddox blustered, his voice carrying across the now quiet room. "You have no jurisdiction here." He tried to push past them toward the exit. "Actually," the lead agent replied calmly, "the multiple allegations of civil rights violations and corruption give us very clear jurisdiction." She held up her phone, showing the live stream still playing. "Would you like to explain the cash exchange we all just witnessed?" Maddox's face reddened. "That was a personal matter. You're twisting this into something it's not." His voice rose with each denial, drawing more cameras, more witnesses, more documentation of his unraveling control. Across the room, Blaine found himself cornered by another team of agents. Malik stood nearby, shoulders straight despite his trembling hands, as he described the mentorship program in detail. "They made us vandalize things," he said clearly. "Said we had to prove ourselves. Mr. Harker would pick targets and tell us what to wreck." Evan stepped forward with his laptop, showing footage of Blaine pressuring teens in the dojo's back room. The audio was crystal clear. Threats, demands for loyalty payments, instructions for harassment campaigns. Blaine's camera-ready charm crumpled as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "Blaine Harker, you're under arrest for conspiracy, criminal intimidation, and corruption," the agent recited. "We have evidence of your involvement in orchestrating false police reports, including tonight's attempted weapon plant." Judge Pike tried to slip away during the commotion, but found his path blocked by federal marshals. They served him with immediate orders, removing him from any cases connected to the investigation. His carefully cultivated image of benevolent authority shattered as his courthouse allies literally backed away from him, suddenly fascinated by their phones or the floor tiles. The crowd parted like waves as Loretta James made her entrance, moving carefully with her back brace but radiating absolute authority. Her presence drew all eyes, commanding more respect than any badge or belt ever had. She surveyed the scene with fierce satisfaction. "About time," she declared, voice carrying to every corner. "Some folks thought they owned this town so long, they forgot it belongs to all of us." She made her way to the twins, standing beside them as state agents continued gathering statements. Renee coordinated the parent witnesses, ensuring everyone's footage was properly backed up and submitted. Tasha stayed close to Malik, both teens looking stunned but proud, as their testimony helped bring down the people who had terrorized them. Danny Wells continued her precise documentation, interviewing key witnesses while everything was fresh. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from larger news outlets picking up the feed. The story was already spreading beyond the town's borders. A representative from a veterans advocacy group pushed through the crowd, waving papers. "We've secured emergency funding," she announced to the twins. "Your program can restart immediately with full support." Other donors followed, offering resources, spaces, equipment. All the things Blaine's network had tried to deny them. The paramedics finally cleared Naomi for movement, though they recommended follow-up care for mild concussion symptoms. She stood carefully, Nia's hand still steady on her back, watching as their careful preparation paid off. Every witness had stayed calm and followed the plan. Every camera had kept rolling. Every piece of evidence had been preserved. "Ma'am," a state agent approached Nia respectfully, "we'll need detailed statements about the pattern of harassment and civil rights violations. Your documentation has been incredibly helpful." Nia nodded. "We have everything organized chronologically. Files go back to the first permit denial, with witness statements and archived footage." Through the windows, dawn began painting the sky in soft colors. The last police vehicles departed with their prisoners. Cleanup crews arrived to repair the damage from earlier confrontations. Parents helped seniors back into their cars, everyone talking quietly about what they'd witnessed. The next morning's sun streamed through fresh windows, warming the training space where seniors and teens gathered on new mats. Nia and Naomi moved through the room, adjusting stances, offering encouragement, building the supportive atmosphere they'd always envisioned. Outside, a worker balanced carefully on a ladder, securing the final letters of a new sign. The morning light caught the fresh paint, making it gleam. The Loretta James Community Safety Center. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.